Now we're both on screen. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Pittman, CEO of the Conquer Leadership Group, founder of Ask Without Fear, and I am super excited to be interviewing newly minted author, I believe, Steven Shattuck, with his Robots Make Bad Fundraisers. Is his new book came out? Did it just come out this week?
Just on Monday, yeah.
I'm so excited. That is so cool. Yay,
Yeah.
welcome. That's so good.
Thanks.
I've been following Stephen and a fan of his, and I hope a friend of his for years. He's an amazing presenter. He tells it like it is. He tells nonprofit leaders how to do better fundraising, and he's just a really great guy. There are some people you meet in the industry that are good at information, not so great at being a human. So if there's anybody that should write a book, Robots Make Bad Fundraisers, it's someone who actually knows how to be a human himself. Steven Shattuck, thanks for being here.
Sure, thanks for having me. I'd rather be the latter, the good person, than the expert, so that's fine.
I know. It's one of those. It's the weird thing in marketing, as you know, that the people that call themselves gurus are often the ones that you need to be suspect of. But if somebody says it about you, do you put it in your bio because it's been said about you and it might be better anyway? But I'd rather be a good human.
I don't
too.
like to. When people refer to me like that, I kind of freak out. It's an odd feeling.
Well, that's great. Tell me what inspired you to write Robots Make Bad Fundraisers? I mean, you work for a tech company. That seems
Yeah, a couple people have mentioned that that's maybe a little counterintuitive, and that's something else I kind of like to be known for, a little bit of a curmudgeon from that standpoint. But while we're getting the Zoom trying to work, that really was kind of what gave me the idea of just things that nonprofits rely on technology-wise that just seem to not work the way we want them to all the time. And I thought I would kind of examine that critically, because you're right, I do work at a tech company, so I do get to listen in on these conversations of people buying software. And it's interesting that there's often interesting motives and motivations for wanting things like automation and artificial intelligence that kind of worry me. I worry that sometimes fundraisers, for the sake of trying to save time and money, which is a good and noble goal, oftentimes will sacrifice in the process things that really work in fundraising, like reaching out personally and giving individual donors an individual experience. And sometimes when we leave things to automation and mass communications, those personal touches kind of get lost. And my thesis in the book is that I think that's one of the reasons why things like retention rates are dropping every single year, is because oftentimes we leave things up to the robots when it should be us doing them.
I'm laughing because just in the last month, I had one of my clients say, "Wait a minute, you want me to call my donors?
What?" Right.
Do you realize how much time that would take? And I'm thinking, do you realize how much time it took you to get them in the first place? It would be far easier to retain them over the long haul, and you'd actually enjoy it because you're going to be a human dealing with other humans that are passionate about what you're passionate about. But
I
it is overwhelming at first when you realize, oh my goodness, I have to still do the touches. I still have to do the work.
And, oftentimes it doesn't take that much time, but I can't think of a better use of time for a fundraiser than trying to figure out why it is a donor gave and thanking them personally and telling them, maybe how the gift is going to be used or what the impact of that is. There's a mountain of research that shows that that's what donors want from us. And it's not new. I mean, fundraisers have been calling donors and writing handwritten notes. I feel like that's kind of fallen out of favor maybe in the last 10 or 20 years. But luckily, I feel like maybe the pendulum is swinging back a little bit, especially in this kind of era of social distancing, where that's maybe one of the few things in our toolkit that we can do.
Well, and I'm just writing, I just last night finally put it out in the wild, and it will be added to, but a webpage about how I don't like the terms major gift because what are the others? Minor gifts, but there's insider speak that sometimes helps us. And major gift fundraisers in particular are having a hard time because they're used to so much of their time being taken up by travel. And so they measure success on face-to-face meetings, dollars raised, and time spent on airplanes or in cars. Right. And now the times in the cars and the airplanes and planning for that is gone. And so there's this weird dance of how do we justify our work? Are the dollars being raised, which is one, but how many times can I call my donors? I've called them every month.
Right.
And what do I do with the rest of my time? And there's plenty to do because there's far more people to call. But you're right. This is a time where that's really being tested. What have you guys, if you're at liberty to say, what have you seen with the Bloomerang customers, as how they're faring through the pandemic? Who are the ones that are succeeding?
Well, it's interesting because we
Well,
wrote the
succeeding
book.
in a fundraising and donor outreach stance, really.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. We noticed, in kind of late March, early April, we were seeing these weird blips in our system of people that were raising a lot more money than they did the previous March and April, which we thought was weird because, the sky was kind of falling.
Right.
And there are lots of other things. Our support team was way busier. So we were reaching out to these customers saying, hey, you seem to be really rocking it right now. What are you doing?
And they
And
said they went to the nonprofit storytelling conference and were getting good
well,
information.
actually, that's true. One of them
Oh,
did. I'll
cool.
spare you that story. But the overarching trends were that they were employing these personal touches, right? They were making phone calls. They were, you mentioned face to face. A lot of them very quickly pivoted to things like this, where they were doing Zoom calls or FaceTime calls or Google Hangouts, and that sort of replaced those in-person interactions, but they were kind of still logged as in-person
Sure.
interactions. Um, so, we put the book together pre-COVID to encourage people to do personal outreach, but it's just interesting
Wow.
that it came out kind of after things settled down a little bit, but sort of proved a couple concepts to be correct, that, donors really respond to in-person interactions, and things like phone calls and handwritten notes. And I really don't think there's a better use of time for fundraisers than to be reaching out to these folks, saying thank you, maybe preemptively. There's another thing that was interesting.
What do you mean by
Um,
that? Preemptive thank
so
yous.
I think a lot of these customers anticipated perhaps that there would be economic uncertainty and that
Yes.
maybe the incomes of these donors would perhaps be affected. One customer of ours was really proactive in reaching out to monthly donors, like mid March, just saying, hey, thanks for being a monthly donor. We know things are going a little haywire right now. We just wanted to thank you for that sustained support. And not only did they not get cancellations, but they had a few people also upgrade. And I think it was because they took that preemptive thank you that was kind of apropos of nothing other than the fact that they were a monthly donor. And then when it came time to go out and appeal them, those folks had already gotten a nice thank you, which I think made the appeal a little bit more palatable and probably encouraged them to give more.
That's great. And that's where, yeah, that's really, I'd love to know. One thing, I want to make one comment about donors, and then I want to find out about your nonprofit storytelling conference story. But there's when you said that's what donors want from us, the research shows. I I don't want people hearing this to think that we're talking about the nonprofits fundraising's role. We're not talking about nonprofits forming themselves to meet donors' needs. That's not our job. Our job is to
Right.
meet some other need. We're supposed to meet a
Absolutely.
mission, and I know you know that. But there's some in our space. There's some healthy conversation and pushback that
Yeah.
is happening in for justice and equity reasons, which are exactly right. So just if you're listening to this and you haven't thought of donors as being part of your mission, I'd encourage you to challenge that. If you receive donated money, your donors are partners for your work because you won't be able to do your work without the donors. And so learning to communicate clearly with them is very good, but I would challenge you to never let your mission be to only serve donors. A portion of your staff has that job, and as a CEO, a portion of your time needs to be committed to getting to know donors and showing them the impact of their work. But that's more of a just doing the right thing.
Yeah.
It's showing donors that the stuff that they invest in is having a return or some sort of impact. So,
Absolutely.
so tell me, yeah, what was the nonprofit storytelling conference connection that sparked?
There was a customer. I think they were an animal shelter. I'd have to look at the case studies. We created about a dozen case studies from these customers that were really rocking it. Doing things like canceling events and kind of converting them into a virtual format. A lot of communication segmentation came up a lot, which I know is something that's discussed a lot at the storytelling conference. Um,
And you have a great session on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just reaching
Yeah.
out to different donors. I think the monthly donor example is an example of that segmentation where, and I talk about this in the book, where we can't just reach out to everyone on our list the exact same way, right? There are lots of different types of
Yeah.
donors in our system, and I'm not talking about just, dollar amount, which is
Right.
sometimes a way to segment donors, but maybe not always a good one. But frequency, monthly donors.
Yeah, you go through, I think in the Nonprofit Academy, you have a session, and I'm sure other places, probably on your own sites. Yeah, you talk about a lot of different segmentation, which I think is helpful. So it's dollars, frequency would be monthly or quarter, multiple times a year or annual.
Their status and reason for giving. You may have a peer-to-peer donor that was just supporting their buddy Mark, who was doing a Facebook fundraiser, versus someone who had, a grandparent that died from the disease that you're trying to get rid of. Like, those are two very different types of donors that may look the same on paper because they both given once, they both gave online, they both gave $25. And that goes back to the personal outreach and building that relationship, so you can find out that information, because you may want to communicate to that person very differently than the other one, which will hopefully help you get that second gift and that fifth gift and that 10th gift.
Ooh, I love that. I thought you were going to say third, but you said fifth and 10th. That's the way it is, because that's what we're building a strong relationship with people. That care about the same mission we do. That's really cool.
And it's hard to do that if you're just letting automation take over, right? If you're saying, well, I'm gonna spend money on this software that's gonna send an e-birthday card to all my volunteers on their birthday, and just a couple of clicks and set it and forget it. Well, wouldn't it be better if you actually sat down and wrote a nice handwritten note to that volunteer? And I know it's because you want to save time, and again, that's a worthy goal, but we spend a lot of time on things that maybe aren't worthy of that attention. Maybe events that have negative ROI, that burn out our employees.
Ooh, going right for it.
Yeah, I mean, and I like events, nothing against events, but I think it really takes a critical look at, okay, what's worth our time, and what are things that we can automate? And I think some things can be automated. AI can be great. AI can tell you who the donors are that you should reach out to manually, right? You just kind of have to, invert that pyramid sometimes to get your priorities straight, I think.
That's interesting. I just heard, I wish I could attribute it to its source, but I just heard a challenge in this week about people. We're at the time of this recording, it's the end of July, last day of July. And this would be a great time for organizations to review what are the things that we haven't been doing that we shouldn't do again. Mm-hmm. If the virus ends and there's a vaccine and all, and we go back to business as normal, whatever the normal is, what are the things we don't want to take into it because we haven't needed to do them? And I think that your mentioning of events is going to be one of those things. But I know that one of the things we are going to want to keep doing is being humans as fundraisers. Absolutely. So thanks so much for being here with us today. Thank you for I wanted to make sure that people, the Ask Without Fear page, saw this, and I love what you're doing. Where can people find your book?
It's on Amazon. If you just search for Robots Make Bad Fundraisers, you'll find it. And if you go to robotsmakebadfundraisers.com, you'll learn a lot more about the book than is on that kind of Amazon description, which is always a little brief. But if you pick it up, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your feedback.
And where can people connect with you on Twitter? Because I know you're...
at Twitter, at Steven Shattuck. Maybe do a little too much tweeting, so if you connect with me there, you'll probably get a response. That was a good way to get me.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here, and I'm super excited that this book has been released into the world. All the best to you guys.